Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, broadcasting live every Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Central from Panama City Beach, Florida, home of the world's most beautiful beaches. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining me on my weekly broadcast. Every week, I'll feature some of the best instructors, coaches, authors, and entrepreneurs in the golf business today. I begin with a great discussion on Coach's Corner, followed by an insightful interview with my special guest. So let's get started by introducing tonight's Coach's Corner panel. All right, thank you everybody for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. As always, very excited to start things off here in just a moment with the Coach's Corner panel, and I'll introduce the guys here in just a minute. But a couple of quick announcements. One of the gentlemen that was going to be joining in on the panel tonight, Peter Exarian, is not going to be able to join us. He was running into some technical issues with his phone, so he's not going to be able to call in. So it'll be John Decker and Pete Buchanan on the panel. Also, I wanted to mention a quick note as well. The previous week's show, of course, I canceled. I just want to explain a little bit about that. There was some technical issues with the archiving with the network that provider that I use, and they were having some serious issues at the time for about 3 or 4 days, and so I decided to make a call, if you will, of not to air the show. So there was no show last week. I canceled the show, as I mentioned, but everything is back in order. So for whatever reason, if there was a previous broadcast that you wanted to listen to and weren't able to because of the issue, you can certainly go back now to the on-demand section. So go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, and any of the previous aired shows are all there in their entirety, except for, like I said, there was not one last week. And also on the Women of Golf show, which primarily was one of the areas that was affected. If you go to blogtalkradio.com/Women of Golf and into the on-demand section, all of the broadcasts there, if you happen to miss, including this week, you can go back in and listen to them in their entirety when you have a chance. I'm going to introduce the panel in a little bit, and then a little bit later on in the show, I'm going to be joined by Dr. Angelica Napolitano, a.k.a. the Golf Doc. She'll be joining me a little bit later on in the broadcast. But also let me remind everybody, too, the Coach's Corner panel is sponsored by a great organization, golfswing.com. They'll be sponsoring the Coach's Corner panel this season, again this year on Golf Talk Live. And let me tell you a little bit about them. Golfswing.com, with its cutting-edge technology, has teamed up alongside some of the best instructors, coaches, and swing gurus in the business. Together, they have created one of the best video teaching and training online platforms in golf. So if you're ready to break 100, 90, 80, or even 70, then join their online video academy and learn from some of the best. In addition to sponsoring the Coach's Corner segment, each week I will post a different golf instructional video tip through my social media platforms. I missed, again, last week because, again, I didn't end up having a program, so I will make sure I get one out this week as well. So join today and watch, practice, and improve your game. Go to golfswing.com after the show and check out their great online video platform. All right, I've got two great guys on the Coach's Corner panel. First up, of course, is John Decker. Both of them have been on actually many, many times over the last several years. John Decker, of course, is a teacher professional at the New Albany Country Club and instructor with golfswing.com. Back in 2015, he was named the Southern Ohio Teacher of the Year. And also he was the prior head instructor at the Grand Cypress Academy of Golf in Orlando, where he worked under top 100 instructors, Fred Griffin and, of course, the late Phil Rogers. He's also authored the book Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game, which, of course, is an accompanying Bible study, and he's also a great motivational speaker. Also joining out the panel is Pete Buchanan, another good friend of mine. He's the founder and director of instruction and owner of Plain Simple Golf LLC, which, of course, houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and Simple Swing Repeater Training Brace. Pete has been teaching for well over 30 years now in the golf industry and is considered a pioneer in keeping it simple out in the golf course. So, guys, welcome to the Coach's Corner panel.
Thank you, Ted.
All right, I appreciate it. And we're going to start off a little late, if you will, and we're going to talk about, because it is early in the season. Now, I know we've talked about this area, but we're going to get a little bit more in depth about it. We've talked about really the importance of a pre-shot routine. So a lot of these golfers out there that are, getting ready to sort of get the dust off their shoes and clubs and head out to the golf course or the driving range or even their indoor facility for some of you still up in the Northeast where it's not quite warm enough to get outside. For those of you that want to get an early jump on your game, now's the time to do it. And here are some great tips that these guys are going to talk about and expand a little bit about. And one of them, of course, is the pre-shot routine. So, John, I'm going to start with you here, and I'm going to read out something very quick, and then I just want you to sort of cover a little bit about this area, and you'll understand in a second. There's actually really 5 steps that I consider to be very important as part of the pre-shot routine. The first step is the decisions. So before you hit any good shot, there is always several decisions that various different elements to take into account. Some of the factors that we're going to take into account might be, as an example, wind, flag position, and even the grain on the green. John, talk about a little bit about really what a golfer, when they're stepping up to that first tee, as an example, some things that might be running through their mind as they get prepared to execute their pre-shot routine before they actually even hit the shot.
That's a great question. I love talking about the pre-shot routine. I want to thank you, Ted, for having me on the show, and Pete, I'm looking forward to being on with you as well. One of the things that I really try to emphasize to my students is when you're on the driving range, and I hope that everyone is warming up before they go to the first hole, is maybe your last 4 or 5 swings, you want to actually emulate the shot that you're going to hit. So assuming you're starting on the first hole, you may be starting on the 10th hole, or you might be sometimes you might be doing a shotgun start. You might be starting on a par 3 or a par 5 or something like that. But what you want to do is you want to try to pretend on the driving range that you're actually hitting your shot. So you want to rehearse it actually hitting the shot that you would want to play. So, for example, if it's a dogleg right and you play a fade, you might pretend, and draw that imaginary hole in your mind and actually make some swings. And then when you get to the first hole, obviously I think everyone, especially in competitive golf, but everyone has a little bit of anxiety and nerves on the first hole. And so it's important to get your breathing right. It's important that you get to the first hole in time. You don't want to show up, obviously, 20 minutes before your tee time, but you want to be there in time. You don't want to be rushing. You want to make sure and you have your balls and your tees and all that all that stuff in your pocket so that you're not scrambling around anxiously. A lot of times I see people, they get up to the first tee and they don't even have a golf ball in their hand. So, it's important that you be up there ready to go. And then the main thing that I try to do is, I try to figure out what side of the tee box I'm going to tee up on, and I make sure I have a target. I make sure on every shot I have a target, and I think that's something that's very important. Again, you mentioned the wind. Obviously, you might be on the driving range, and the wind might be blowing in one direction, but then when you get to the first hole, it might be blowing in a completely different direction than what you were used to on the driving range. So it's important that you pay attention to the wind as well. And then from there, you just go ahead and try to go through your routine step by step where you see the shot, you feel it, you execute it, and then you trust all the above.
Right. And some great points. Pete, I want to talk a little bit. John just actually mentioned it a little bit, but I want to get into a little bit more specifics. And like I said, there's 5 different steps, and we're going to go through each of them a little bit. And again, John, I know you touched briefly on a little bit, but we're going to talk a little bit more. Step number 2 is actually the feel. Making a small practice swing of some description is always, a good idea to give you some sort of feel of what you're about to do. And again, it doesn't need to be a very strict practice swing. In other words, you don't have to necessarily be swinging at 100%. It might be 50% to start with, and it might even get up to 60, 70, maybe 80% of your swing. So how important is it really to sort of get that feel established when you're getting up there again to that first tee as part of your pre-shot routine?
Well, again, Ted, thanks for having me on. And John, again, looking forward to chatting with you throughout the show. To me, I always try to get all of my players to get something in a little bit of a quote-unquote waggle or start that gives them a start to what their swing is supposed to do. And so just a little reminder, and they can use that as a reminder to get the club moving in the proper direction. We sit on the tee box and we talk about it. And I try to get them to visualize what they feel the start of their swing should be, and then incorporate a little bit of a start to that, so that when they're out on the golf course, they can use that to help them relax and keep them moving before they hit shots. I think it's real important that, before they actually pull the trigger, that, they keep moving and keep relaxed, and give them a little bit of something to feel, a little something of direction of where the club's going to go, so that they don't stand there. And, sometimes you'll watch somebody get set up over it, and, you're waiting for them to fall asleep. They've stood there so long, and nothing's moving, nothing's happening. And, all they're doing is getting more tense by the minute. And you could probably go over there and push them over, because they're just like concrete. But, I always tell them to also, watch the TV, watch the tour players, watch what they do. I mean, you see so many of them, they'll take a little bit of a rehearsal, and they do the same thing over and over again. And so I try to get them to understand a little bit of a start, a little bit of something that can get them into a position that will help them, relax and keep moving, but also do the same thing over and over again. So it becomes the same on every shot to help them settle in, get more relaxed as they're out there.
Right. Well said. John, I'm going to come back to you. And again, I know you touched on some of these points, but I want to get into a little bit more specific. And I want to specifically talk about visualizing, which is step 3. We want to visualize that shot. So talk about, you're coming up and you've assessed the hole. You've seen whether it's a dog leg, whether it's a straight hole, short, long, whatever the case may be. Now you're ready to visualize the shot that you need. So walk us through that step.
Well, it's interesting, because every time I get this question, I always think about an interview that I heard with Tiger Woods. And Tiger Woods' father took him to a guy who was working for, I believe it was the Army, and he trained the Green Berets, and he was basically a sports psychologist, and he was talking to Tiger about visualizing the shot, and Tiger said, I can't see the shot. I have to feel it. And I thought that was really interesting, because Tiger said that they kind of came to an agreement that because he was more of a feel player, that he would rehearse the swing. And that's why a lot of times when you see Tiger on the tee box, he's making very slow rehearsal swings. So in his mind, he is visualizing the shot by feeling it. Now, some people are very they see lines. They're very meticulous, and they're going to be very, like a Nick Faldo would be somebody like that, very meticulous. Where a Bubba Watson or Tiger would be more feel in trying to shape their swing with a particular tee shot, for example. So, but it's important that if you're going to visualize the shot, is that you have to visualize a shot that's going to give you the maximum room for your ball to land. In other words, trying to cut corners and flying it straight over bunkers and carrying bunkers for the average golfer, I think is going to lead to a lot of problems. So it's important that you give yourself a target where you have some generous room on both sides. So if you tend to push it or you tend to pull it, you have some room. And then from there, it's always important that you stand behind the ball to do this. It's very difficult to visualize if you're standing beside the ball, but if you stand behind the ball, it gives you a much better perspective. And I like to try to stand about a good 3 to 4 yards behind the ball, so I really have a good perspective of where my target's going to be. And then the trajectory, especially with my irons. If I'm hitting and the wind's in my face and I want to lower the trajectory of my shot, I visualize, okay, I see, what trajectory, but then I try to make some practice swings where I can feel very much what Pete was just saying, where I feel the swing, because I know what a low shot and a high shot feels like. And so I tell myself I want to hit a lower shot, I want to hit a higher shot, and then I just go ahead and execute it from there.
Well said, John. You're exactly right. It's so important, I think, for a lot of our golfers, whether it be club golfers or weekend warriors, if you will, to really have that visualization on every shot. And that's important to incorporate that into your pre-shot routine, because there's no point in standing up, over the ball and you're thinking about 20,000 different things about the golf swing, but you're not actually visualizing what you want the ball to do or where you want the ball to go. And a lot of golfers don't bother because I've got too many others grabbed it there. Thank you. Pete, back to you, number 4. Now that we've seen the shot in our head and we're ready to commit now, obviously we want to commit to the trigger and we want to actually execute the shot. And because, Pete, and this falls into your wheelhouse here, we're starting from a stationary position. It's always recommended, a lot of the top professionals, I remember Nicholas always talking about having some sort of a small trigger to sort of begin that movement, if you will. Talk a little bit about that. Once we've got everything, the feel, we've got the idea of what the shot, the visualizing the shot, now we're ready to execute. What do we need to do at this point?
Well, more than anything else, you need to go. I want them to, once they've got a feel that they know what they're going to do and they're positioning themselves up to the ball, then just go. I mean, don't hesitate. Don't stand there too long. Get after it. I've always said the longer you stand there, the more you just delay the agony. So just get it over with. But it's more of just giving them the chance to get themselves set, and then once you have the picture, go. There's no reason to stand there. And a little bit as you're talking about that, and with that picture, I think I want to back up just a little bit. I think one of the questions I always have my players ask is, I want you to visualize the shot, but then ask yourself, can you actually do it? I mean, sometimes they like to picture shots that they've never done before, and it's going to be hard to pull that off. So make sure it's something you can do, and then once you visualize it and you can do it, and you've got yourself set up, then just go. Don't wait too long. And if you need something that's going to be a little bit of a trigger, we watched Nicholas for years, he'd turn his head and then off he went. And so,
right.
If it's something that I notice when they're practicing and I put them through routines, or when they're playing, if I notice they're taking too long, once they get set over it, I'll start to work in something there and say, hey, here's what you might want to try. Move this, make a little bit of a turn, something that they can do to get them started. But I think just more importantly for me, I want them just to go. I don't want them to stand there too long. Once you've made that decision, take off with it and go. And then, I think for that, it's going to help them a little bit overall to stay more at ease and just keep tension out of it when they're set up over it. So once they get that visualization and they know they can do it, just go hit it.
Yeah, and some great advice as well. Step number 5, of course, we've now hit the shot. The ball's left the club face. How we react, John, is crucial at this point, because your reaction can be a key part of the next pre-shot routine. As an example, if we hit a bad shot, a negative overreaction can often cost you when it comes to the next shot. So if we've hit a poor tee shot, maybe we've pushed it into the woods a little bit or into the rough, the thick rough, we're dragging that with us. Talk a little bit about that, how we react to those good and bad shots.
Wow, this is the I think the one thing that really separates the men from the boys I see from the ones that really make it as players and the ones that kind of fizzle out, and that is your attitude on the golf course, because it can be difficult at times. We've all been there. You get off to a rough start, are you going to be able to hang in there? You never want one bad shot to affect your next one, because now it's affecting 2 shots. So if you can learn, I'll be the first to tell someone, if you're going to get upset, give yourself about 5 or 10 seconds. Don't make it, don't throw clubs or do anything that's going to get you kicked off the golf course or hurt someone. But get it out and then go from there. And that's one of the things that I would suggest. If you're riding in carts, sometimes it's good to just walk. Tell your partner, you know what, go ahead and drive. I'm going to walk this one. That's a good way to burn off the adrenaline. That's one of the reasons why I enjoy walking on a golf course more than riding in carts, because if I hit a really bad shot, it gives me time to walk it off and work through it. But the other thing, the flip side of that is if I hit a really good shot, I don't want to just rush up there and hit my next one. I want to, because sometimes the adrenaline of hitting that really good shot gets you excited, and you get out of the moment. You want to be able to stay in the moment. So, when I'm speaking, I always tell people that yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. So yesterday is your last shot, and tomorrow is your next shot. Today is a gift from God, and that's why we call it the present. The best players in the world stay in the present moment at all times, and if you can learn to do that, you will play your best golf of your life for this year. If you can learn to stay in the present moment on all your shots, and it is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy, and this is why having a pre-shot routine is really critical. And I want to point something out too, because we've covered the 5 steps here, and it sounds like a lot of information, and people are sitting there, well, we're trying to be mindful of slow play and things like that. Although there's 5 steps that are crucial in having a successful pre-shot routine, this really takes place in a matter of seconds. So once the decision has been made as to what club and shot you are about to play, the remainder should only be a maximum of 10 to 20 seconds. Incorporating a routine into both your playing time is significantly going to change your ability to score on the golf course. So, you don't want to be taking, 10 minutes over each shot. It should be a matter of seconds. But the idea is, once you train yourself, and I think you both would agree with this, once you train yourself to take each of these steps and incorporate it into that pre-shot routine, over time you'll learn, it'll become second nature, and you won't even have to think about it. It's just a matter of you step up and you go through that routine. And that is why it's important when you're up on the practice tee, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Pete, I'm going to jump to you, is your range warm-up. So whether it's a full-blown practice session or whether you've come, 15, 20 minutes before your round, you want to warm up. And this is where you sort of put the fine-tuning, if you will, on that. Let's talk about that, Pete. Let's use this example first. Let's take out of the equation a full practice session. We're just warming up on the range before a round. What are some key tips that you would like to give the listeners out there on how to best prepare for today's round?
Well, what I like them to do is like any other sport you see. If you look at, NFL, Major League Baseball, any of those things, they're always spending some time warming up. And what I want them to warm up is what they're going to be using. And a lot of times I'll say, just start with a wedge. Some of the key things you need to do in your swing. So let's start off really slow, really small. Put them out there, 25, 30, 40 yards, and just get yourself into a little bit of a rhythm, hitting some really simple, easy shots, and just get yourself moving and warm up the things that you're going to need to do in order to play your round. Start off that way. And I know for me, when I start off hitting some wedges, if they're going pretty good, then I've got a pretty good sign of what's going to be happening. But also, too, I let them know that, you want to warm up these little short shots because you're going to have them. And so you want to be prepared for them. The amateurs have way more shots inside of 40 yards in a pitching, chipping type situation than a lot of the pros do. And so they need to warm those up. And I think it's a great way to get started. And then just pick a few clubs, picturing the rounds you're going to play. And if you know a little bit about the golf course, pull out a club you're going to use, grab a target, hit a few of those. And then the last thing I always like to have them do when they're warming up is pull that driver out, and it's for 2 reasons. One, to hit a few that you can get that drive going, and secondly, just to see if you can use it. So if you're hitting it a mile off line off the driving range, you might want to go with something else off that first tee, because now you're going to be a little bit more nervous. So you might want to put a little bit more loft in your hands so you can put that down the fairway.
Right.
And so it's just giving yourself a chance to prepare yourself for going to play golf. And the last thing I would say is don't just drive by the putting green. Hit a few of those before you start. I know some of them like to hit 50 drives for the pleasure of 4, drive right past the putting green, and they can't figure out why they can't putt. So stop at the green too. And give yourself some time to hit a few putts.
Yeah, that's some great advice, because that's something that we see far too often. Is a lot of players spending, they're more worried, and this is really the thing that always is a little bit of an ironic or irony, if you will, about our club golfers is, they're more worried about that first tee shot than they are the rest of the round. They want to make sure that when they're, hitting that first tee shot, John, it's got to be, number one. They want to get it dead out in the middle of the fairway, or maybe with a slight fade or draw, whatever the shot shape that they particularly favor, and they forget about on the putting surface, which accounts for a good 50% or more of the shots in a round. So they wonder why they're not breaking 100. Well, that's part of the reason. So let's talk about the first tee jitters. That's a good place to start. Everybody has them. Even the pros will admit that they're a little bit nervous when they get on the first tee. Let's talk about that. What are some good tips that you can give some of the golfers out there that are tuning in tonight about how to sort of get over the first tee jitters?
Well, the first thing, Ted, and we've already talked about, is the pre-shot routine. I mean, that's kind of like Linus and his blanket. That's something that you hold dearly to you, and you use that pre-shot routine all the way through the 18 holes. I mean, it's got to be. I mean, that's the one thing. There's not a tour player that's out there that doesn't have a pre-shot routine. They all have pre-shot routines. Some are different, some are longer, and I would agree you don't want to take too much time. The other thing that I try to tell the students, especially when I was working at golf schools, a lot of times people would be playing with people they didn't know and they were nervous about that, is I would tell them, listen, everybody's nervous, first of all. And second of all, no one really cares about your game. They care about their game. Just like you don't care about theirs. You're not sitting there thinking, if we were playing, I wouldn't be saying, I wonder what Ted's going to do on the first hole. I would be thinking about what am I doing on the first hole. So focus on, no one's judging you. And, and I also tell a lot of my students that I've had the first hole, I've bogeyed the first hole before and played great and broken 70. And I've also birdied the first hole and shot in the 80s. So just because you hit a great tee shot doesn't necessarily mean that's going to translate to a great day. You don't want to judge your rounds on one shot. If you put all that emphasis on one shot, my gosh, that puts way too much pressure on your game. You want to. I heard Raymond Floyd say this in an interview one time. He said, you want to ease yourself into the round. Like Pete was saying, you don't want to necessarily hit driver off the first hole. Hit a 3-wood or hit a hybrid. Get yourself in play. Just get yourself out there. Don't take unnecessary risk on the first hole. Don't try to if there's water or if there's bunkers out there, take those out of play. And you can learn to take those out of play with course management. Talk to your pro. How's a great way for me to take those fairway bunkers or that creek or whatever it is out of play, and have a strategy. So you're thinking more about your strategy than you are about your golf swing and about everybody watching you and the nerves. So those are some little mind games that you can play. A lot of it is strategy, and a lot of times in tournaments, if I was nervous, I just pull my 3-wood out because I knew I had more loft. I knew loft is your friend. I mean, the more loft I have in my hand, the straighter I'm going to hit the shot. So that's a great way to get yourself, off on the first hole.
Yeah, that's some great advice, John, as well. And, the thing to remember, too, guys, is, and I think a lot of people forget this, your pre-shot routine, again, visualizing that shot, you want to take a look at the landscape of the first tee, the first hole, if you will. And if it's a very wide open, very forgiving fairway, then it's probably okay to pull out your driver, even if you're not hitting at your best. If you've got a lot of room for error, it's okay. But if your course tends to be typically very tight fairways, and you walk up to number one and it's real tight, and you're not hitting your driver, 100%, then that's probably not the best club. So club selection is very, very important. And I like what both of you said. Really sort of easing into the round a little bit. Everybody's sort of quick. They want to bomb it out there and sort of show off, especially if they're hitting it well. And that's fine if you are very solid with that driver. But if you're not, and you're playing on a course that's not as forgiving as maybe another one, then it is probably a smarter play to ease back and hit a 3-wood or even a 5-wood or something, or a good hybrid club, just to get it in position. And then, when the holes, as they progress, when they get a little bit more forgiving, and if you're not hitting your driver the best that particular day, you might want to take a chance as long as you don't have a lot of trouble out there. So it really depends. And John, as you pointed out, this is where course management comes into play. It's very really understand, and especially if you're playing a course that you play quite frequently, you should know where the trouble lies pretty much like the back of your hand. So if you're still making the same mistakes every round, then you need to sort of analyze what it is that you're doing wrong or what have you been doing. It's not just a matter of hitting a solid or not solid shot. It's maybe your strategy is not the best, and that's why you're not succeeding on the golf course. Which brings me to another thought here, Pete, and that is, we all have some bad holes, maybe a bad hole or two. Recovering from that, that's something that a lot of people, even a bad round, last season maybe they didn't finish very strong, and they're carrying that through the winter months. Now they're getting ready to come back out, and that's what's sort of creeping in your mind. Some good thoughts and things that you can think of that will help some of our club golfers out there that maybe have had some bad holes or two, or maybe they've been able to get out there a little bit in some of the areas of the United States here where it is a little bit warmer and they've played a little bit of golf and they've had a few bad, a hole or two. What are some good things that they can do to overcome that and to recover from it?
Well, I think first of all, I try to make sure that they understand that, you can never give up. It's real easy to. I mean, you get a bad tee shot and you think, oh, great, there goes this hole. But if you're playing a par four, the most important shot's the fourth one. If it doesn't go in, now it's a 5. So don't put so much pressure on that first one, as John was saying. But I think if you can just understand that 1 or 2 shots in a round is not going to change the whole deal. You might hit 1 or 2 or 3 bad shots, but you also might make 3 or 4 or 5 long putts, and you've made up for it. So there's always a counterbalance in there if you allow yourself the opportunity to take advantage of it. I think so many times that they get so down that there's no way they can recover because they can't see it. And the more frustrated you get on the golf course, the harder it is to see how to get back out of it. And so I think you need to keep it very positive. Just understand that, bad shots are going to happen. I was talking to some players that are going to play in a tournament right now, and I said, look, I'm going to tell you right now, there's going to be 4 bad swings on the golf course minimum, and you're going to hit 4 pretty squirrely shots. But I said, you're also going to hit a bunch of good ones. So don't let those 4 get you down, because you can recover from those 4, and you're going to make a whole bunch of other things. But if you let those 4 get you down, now there's going to be 8, and then there's going to be 9, then 10. And so there's going to be some shots that you're going to hit that aren't going to be very good. It happens. It happens to all of us. You watch some tour players, they drive it down the fairway 4 holes in a row, and they hit one 80 yards offline. It happens. But then you look on the scoreboard and they made a par. So you can never give up. You always have to remember that, how many times have you seen somebody that hit 3 really bad shots and then they blade a chip and it hits the pin and goes in? They still write down a 4. Even though it wasn't the prettiest of 4s, it's still a 4. So, don't give up. Continue to play and don't let those shots get you down, because I think, I've always said the devil's in the details, and if you keep those details in there, you're going to have a hard time getting out of it.
Yeah, and that's a great point as well, Pete. A lot of players on, kind of get in this funk, if you will, after a couple of bad holes. And I think it goes back to a point that you talked about a little bit earlier, or Pete did, I guess, driving past that putting green, during your warm-up session. You're out there and you're hitting your drives. The short game can save a multitude of sins out of the golf course. Johnny, I think you would agree with that.
Of course.
We get there and, we hit some poor tee shots, or maybe even our approach shot isn't that stellar, but it's amazing how some good chipping or maybe even pitching and certainly good putting can come together and maybe salvage a par, or even in some cases even a birdie. So let's talk a little bit about that. Why is it, I know I've mentioned it here, but why is it that we can't seem to get our golfers out there to understand this analogy that it's not what happens off the tee that scores the best round, it's what happens around the green? Explain that.
Well, I think a lot of it is ego-driven. I mean, I think a lot of people get wrapped up in how far they hit their drives and how far they hit their pitch and wedge and things like that. People tell me when I get a teenager that tells me they hit their sand wedge 100 yards, I say, well, I don't hit mine 100 yards, and I don't try to hit it 100 yards. I try to hit it 90 yards. I don't get, you want to get people out of that mindset. What matters is the score. What that is, golf is measured. You're measured by your score, and that is what you're measured by. And so, it's important that you teach people how to finish the hole and how to finish, close the deal, as they say, because it does you no good to hit. It drives me crazy to hit 2 great shots, be on the green, and 3-putt. I mean, I think to myself, I just went 450 yards in 2 shots, and it took me 3 shots to go 20 feet. And so, I think that teaching students the importance of the short game, I want students, I would much rather practice the short game than stand on a driving range and hit 5-irons. I mean, that to me is not very, very fun, pounding balls. But the short game, it starts with the way, in the lessons, I think, golf professionals can get caught up in trying to have their students make perfect swings. In reality, that's something that will never be obtainable for anyone. And so golf is a game of misses. You're going to have to know how to manage your misses, and that's course management. And then you have to know how to recover from your misses, and that's the short game. And then we all have to putt. I don't care how well you play, you can't avoid putting. And so you have to know how to putt. And then teaching students the difference between, how to gauge the speed of the greens, and then reading the greens. And when students, if they were to really do an honest assessment of their game, they would see that from 150 yards in, that's about 75% of their score. And so if I were to go into your business and say, I'm going to improve I can improve 75% of your business, or I can improve 25% of your business, what do you think a smart businessman is going to do? They're going to go, okay, how can you help my 75%? And so that's what I try to emphasize, and it's very difficult for a lot of people to do that because of their ego about, well, I feel like if I can get an extra 10 yards on my drive, that's going to lower my handicap, and it's just not the case.
Yeah, and you would think, some excellent points, John. You would think that after, Pete, all this time that, golf has been around and all of the, top instructors around the world have talked about this and hours and hours and hours on the Golf Channel and all these other media outlets that have talked about the importance of the short game. You would think that people would finally catch on, but John speaks the truth here. Is it's just not as exciting, for the average golfer to be chipping and putting.
Very true. And if you watch, a lot of the advertising, they're not advertising, making the 4-footer. They're advertising the latest driver that hits it, 400 yards, hits your longest drive. And, everything's built off of distance and how far you can bust it off the tee. And so, yeah, we're a little bit against the grain there because, we know the importance of the short game, and we know that that's really where all the scoring comes from. But, they don't see it that way. It's always more fun to, drive that ball out there a mile and just to, avoid the short stuff in the practicing. Two things that I've always done with all of my students, I always tell them, you don't have to be over in the short game area to practice your short game. You can do it right here on the tee box. When I'm having them warm up, they're always hitting little pitch shots. And when we finish, they end up hitting pitch shots and little chip shots. And so I'm always getting them to understand that part of your practice has to be these particular shots that we're going to hit. And I've also developed a scorecard for when they play that tracks every shot they hit by categories. And so they're really going to find out before too long where their trouble actually really is. And it's amazing to them. You'll have somebody come in and play around and say, I played really bad today. It's those tee shots that really killed me. I said, well, you hit every one of your tee shots in play, but inside of 40 yards, you had 42 shots. That's too many. So there's where your game really got away from you. And now they can see it. So they can actually really see it. So I think it's, I've always said as a culture, I'd love to see more it's hard to do, but I'd love to see more advertising on putting, on pitching, on chipping, on short games. It's not the glamour, but I would always love to see more of that portrayed out there. That that's really where it comes down to fruition is those shots around the green. I mean, if you think about every round, you got 14 tee shots. If you look at the second shots, you really have 18. There's 4 third shots, so you're at 36. And if you two-putt every green, there's 36 more. And so there's a big deal in there with all those other shots. So you want to make sure if there's 14 tee shots that you only have 14. You don't want to have 17. That means you have 3 of them out of bounds. And so that's really where you have to start looking at your scoring and what's going on, and where you can make up ground and not make up ground. So I think putting, I'll have somebody come in and they had 26 putts and they shot 10 shots worse than they did the day before. And I said, well, we got to look at it, keep that putting going, but there's other parts that go with it. So it's a tough one, but I always try to make sure that they understand that the short stuff is so important. And as you said before, I mean, you can hit some squirrely shots and, get it up and down. To me, that's more fun than anything else. You hit a bad when you had to recover, then you get it up and down and make a par, go to the next one or bogey, or whatever your particular score is relative to your handicap. That, to me, is so much more fun. And instead of that, hitting 2 shots on the green, 3-putting. That drives me bananas. But, that's just me. But, I really enjoy the ones where you just hit a squirrely shot and you're able to recover.
And it's interesting, guys, as well, when you look at, somebody like Tiger, when he was, really on top of his game, and certainly he's playing well now, but when he was really at the height of his game a little bit earlier on, if you look at his stats, he certainly was not necessarily number 1 in driving distance. He might have been in the top 3, and it sort of rotated because there were others. Bubba Watson, when he came on, of course, I think was out driving Tiger. But one interesting stat about Tiger Woods is he was not the most accurate off the tee. But leading to your point, Pete, what you were just talking about, and John, you've mentioned as well, is his recovery shots were what really made him. It was not, necessarily. I mean, obviously there is advantages if you're driving well and getting it further down the fairway, but you have to be able to have good recovery shots, and also. He was a phenomenal putter. I mean, when he got on there, when he got over a 10-foot, 12-foot putt, you almost knew with some certainty that the majority of them were going to drop. And if they didn't, they were going to come darn close. And again, that obviously confidence builds up. But that goes back to, what you guys have been talking about. And that is, it's better sometimes to get yourself in a good position and so that you can make some of those good short shots, those pitch shots, those chip shots, whatever the case may be, and obviously some good putting if you want to reduce scores. If you want to hit the ball really long, if that's all you care about, well then, get into some long drive contests or something like that if that's your speed or if that's your style. But if you're trying to score better, it's not going to make a difference how far you hit the ball if it's not in play. So, whether you hit it 300 yards or 275 or 325, if it's never in play, that, 300-plus yard drive doesn't mount to a hill of beans. So, you really have to use some common sense when you get out on the golf course. Final thing, guys, and you've all both sort of talked about this a little bit in some of your analogy, and John, I'm going to come back to you. But post-round analysis, we get back into the clubhouse, we have maybe a few cocktails with our buddies and things like that, which is great. But it's also a time, and we talk about maybe we had a few good laughs out in the golf course because, John didn't hit a couple of great shots and hit some squirrely drives, or Pete, topped one into the water or what have you, and I, just didn't show up, whatever the case may be. But, that's a good time when we get away from the course to really evaluate what happened out on the golf course. Talk us through what do you want your students to really be mindful of when they do their post-round analysis?
Well, I want them to keep stats. I want them to know. I want them to figure out their fairways that they hit, their greens in regulation. I want them to count their putts. I want them to figure out their up and down percentage, their bunker percentage, and then their penalty shots. Those are the main things I look at. And I tell them there's two reasons for this. Number one, this is going to educate. And I always tell them, you need to do this within an hour or two after your round because it's fresh in your mind. Don't try to do it a week later, when you come in for the lesson. And then when they come to me in the lesson, I want them to come to me with that information. Now, this benefits both me as the instructor and it benefits them because what it does is it enlightens them they go, wow, I didn't realize I had 42 putts today. I thought I was a better putter than that. And I always say, at a bare minimum, 36 is, that's our bar, that we're trying to get people to. And then we want to just keep lowering that bar. And for me, when I would play tournament golf, my bar was 30. I always wanted to try to get under 30 putts. Now, sometimes I didn't do that. Obviously, if I hit more greens in regulation, that number went up. So it's educating your students so that when they come to you, it gives me a much better way of teaching them because I can look at their stats and go, wow, we don't need to work on your full swing. We need to work on your bunker game or whatever the issue may be. So I think it's beneficial to both the student and the teacher.
Yeah, I agree. And Pete, I know that you do a lot of online in addition to, one-on-one teaching and coaching and that with your students in person, but you also work with a lot of students literally around the globe through your online coaching programs. And obviously that information, as John just described, is even more important to have those statistics because you're not always physically able to be right there with that particular student. So you've got to have some of that information to make some informed decisions on how to help them. So talk about that for the benefit of not only the students, but also for coaches that are maybe either just getting into that sort of platform or maybe thinking about getting into that platform, the importance of having that information available to you as an online coach.
Well, there's no question that information is really important. And, echoing what John said, it's great that they keep stats, and I have, a number of things that I like for them to keep, and that's one of the reasons why I designed this scorecard like I did because, all they have to do is fill that scorecard in while they're playing. It's they can take it, it's fillable, they can change it to their golf course to what their pars are and the scores, and then they can fill in as they go. And as soon as they send that to me, I basically I can picture how they played. Because I've got all the information I need from all the different areas that they are checking as far as the shots that they're hitting. But when you're getting into it from an online basis, the more information you can get from, the better it's going to be because they sort of have to be your eyes and they have to be able to tell you what's going on. I mean, I can look at some swing videos and I can get a pretty good idea from all the years that I stood on that line with the Jacob schools and watched swings. I mean, I know what results I'm gonna see, but I always want them to be able to tell me what's going on because it just helps them to understand as well from a ball flight impact perspective and what we see and how that produces the shots that they're going to hit. So all that information is really crucial, and I'm always talking to all of those ones that I have online. I mean, I have them set up in some of these spaces that I have, the content spaces, so that I can interact with them a lot, sending them messages, sending them texts, voicemails, just a little voice recording, just so we can constantly have that information. And it's vital because, as John said, it's not only important for them to understand it, but it's really, really cool for us because then we can see what's going on with their game, and then we can pinpoint the practice and begin to move their practices to help them in the areas that they need the most help in and the ones that are keeping them from scoring like they should be because, and John mentioned it before, that's the ultimate deal. What's your score? When you get done playing around, they say, what'd you shoot? They said, how far did you hit it on 16? You say, what was your score? I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Right.
And so it's getting them to understand their own game and having them begin to track their game, I think is really, really crucial so that they can get a better understanding of what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think, guys, the more engaged a student is in their own game, I think the more excited they can become about wanting to keep that information. A lot of them, they'll maybe jot down how many putts they had on a green, and some will take it a step further, and if they hit the fairway, they'll mark that on their scorecard as well. But I think keeping track of those stats and getting them engaged, I think one of the worst things that I see a lot of students do is they'll come to the lesson tee, they'll take a lesson, and then you don't see them for a week, maybe 2 weeks in some cases, and they come back and they've done absolutely nothing to prepare for that next lesson. They haven't recorded any. Maybe they've gone out and played a couple of rounds. Some cases they don't even play any golf, and then they wonder why they're not improving. So they're looking for that sort of a quick fix or a Band-Aid solution, as we've talked about many times on the Coach's Corner panel. But the truth of the matter is the student has to be equally engaged. It's not just a matter of standing there and listening to the instructor or coach talking about different things that they need to work on. They have to feel like they're being engaged as well. And the only way that they can do that is really for us to express the importance, track of that information. Because once they start to do that, and it's like their pre-shot routine, once they start keeping track of that information and doing it on a regular basis, it then becomes second nature. It becomes another routine that they can get into. So every time they go to the golf course, even in a practice session, if they want to keep track of certain things that they're doing, how many chips they got within so many feet of the cup, if they want to mark off, different lengths of putts and how many putts they made, or how many putts they got within a 2 foot or 3 foot circle of when they're lag putting, as an example. Keeping track of that information and encouraging them to do it in a way that can be fun, and especially if they go with a buddy, they can do things and make some games along the way to make it a little bit interesting. Then it becomes second nature. And I think what ultimately ends up happening is then they can kind of get excited. So when they come to that next practice session or coaching session, if you will, then they can say, hey, I've been keeping track, this last month, and here's some great stats that I've noticed. I'm really excited. My putting's getting better. My chipping's getting better. You can see it, and there's some quantifiable results. And I think that you both would probably agree that the more that we educate them doing something like along that lines, the better it's going to have an end result for them. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think one thing that's important is,
and
when they keep stats like this, there are areas that they're improving on that they may not understand. And this helps them to see that, hey, look how much better you are at chipping and pitching now.
Right. Well, and the other thing, too, is by reviewing that with their teaching pro or their coach, now they're able to find out and get the answers as to why. Obviously putting's a little bit different. We understand if the ball's going in the hole, we know we're doing everything all right. But now we can talk about and refine technique a little bit more. Once we know that they're starting to understand the stroke a little bit better, and they're starting to see some tangible results, now you can kind of fine-tune things. You can fine-tune that game instead. So now as the chipping and the pitching and that starts to come, into fruition, and their putting is getting a little bit more sharp, now things. But when the numbers are all over the place and the ball's flying here and flying there, and they're not really observant as to what's going on during their round, then it's hard as a teaching professional or coach to really be able to work with that student. I mean, yes, we can see where the ball goes and we can see ball and make certain adjustments in that. But if we're not playing in that round with them, we don't know how they're putting it all together. We know they can hit some good shots when they're on the practice tee, and yes, we can take them out for a playing lesson. But having them record that information, I think, gives us a wealth of information, but also gets them actively involved. And once you get the students involved, and get them proactive is, I guess, the word I'm looking for, ultimately being better players down the road. And those scores are going to start to drop much quicker than if they go out to the local pro shop and spend, a ton of money on a new driver or even a new putter. It's, in my opinion, I think you have to invest time into improving your game. Otherwise, you're just wasting time. For everybody all the way around. So on that note, guys, great discussion, very interesting tonight. Thank you, as always, for joining me in the Coach's Corner, and I'm going to give each of you This time I'll start with you, Pete, and then John will wrap it up. An opportunity for the folks listening to the show, if they want to reach out and get in touch with you, where they can do that.
Well, again, thanks, Ted, for having me on. And John, always a pleasure chatting with you in these Coaches Corners. They can reach me at plainsimplegolf.com. That's Plane is the plainsimplegolf.com. All my information's out there, and all the different things that we're doing. And there's some interactive stuff that we're going to be putting out there. So very easy to find the contact info and to see what's going on in the simple world, as I like to say.
Well said. John?
Well, thank you again, Ted and Pete. I enjoyed it as always. You can follow me on Facebook at John Decker Golf Instruction, and I spell my first name Jon. You can also follow me on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. I'm also doing videos with golfswing.com. If you go to golfswing.com/John Decker, you can watch. I have about almost 300 videos that are up there now. And I've got a podcast that I'm going to be doing with your next guest, Ted, Dr. Angelica Napolitano, and we're going to be starting that in the spring, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to be in North Carolina speaking on May 1st at the First Baptist Church in Southern Pines, and then on May 2nd at the Benson Mayoral Breakfast, which is going to be at the Benson Baptist Church. And last thing, my book, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game, you can get that on Amazon or Barnes & Noble websites.
Well, as always, guys, Pete and John, thank you very much for joining me on the Coaches Corner panel. It's always a pleasure having both of you on, and I look forward to the next time. So have a great weekend, and get out there and hopefully play some good golf, or at the very least, get out there and help some others do the same. Anyways, till next time, thank you very much, both John and Pete, for joining me tonight on Coach's Corner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
All right, bye-bye. All right, that was John Decker and Pete Buchanan. As I mentioned earlier, Peter Agazarian wasn't able to join us tonight. We ran into some technical difficulties, so he'll be on the next round when he's on, I believe, next month. So. But a great discussion tonight from both of the panelists, John Decker and Pete Buchanan, and don't forget to reach out to them as well. As I mentioned at the early part of the broadcast, very excited to welcome back golfswing.com as a sponsor for the Coaches Corner panel. And here's just a short advertising just to let you know a little bit more about them. And you can go to their website when the show's over and hopefully join their great online video academy. Here you go.
Are you finally ready to improve your golf game? GolfSwing.com is changing the way golfers learn online. With the largest collection of golf training programs and drills on the planet, GolfSwing.com can help you improve every part of your game. Whether you want to gain more distance, hit it closer, or just sink more putts, GolfSwing.com's staff of world-class coaches can help you gain the results you need. Watch unlimited videos on any device from anywhere in the world and start playing better, scoring lower, having more fun, and saving money. Get your fix on demand at golfswing.com.
All right. Again, that was our sponsor of the Coaches Corner panel, golfswing.com. And if you visit the website at the end of the show, like I said, there's some great information there, and you can join their online video academy. It's very, very affordable, and see some great instructors like John Decker, who was on the Coaches Corner panel tonight, and many, many others. And I will be featuring a video. I'll probably post it up tomorrow on social media from one of the other instructors that's on the golfswing.com platform. Definitely a great platform to get involved with. All right. As I mentioned, I got a very special guest tonight. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction here, and then I will bring her on. I see that she's ready. My very special guest tonight is Dr. Angelica Napolitano, a.k.a. the Golf Doc. She's a TPI certified doctor of physical therapy and owner of the Optimal Physical Therapy and Wellness. Her practice is, again, located in Jupiter, one of the most well-established golf communities in the United States. The combination of her skill set as a physical therapist and passion for the game of golf has fostered the quintessential marriage for her expert niche creation in golf rehab and fitness community. As a cash-based physical therapist, Dr. Napolitano offers services that provide the patient with first-class experience delivering quality of care in a convenient, elite, and private manner. She believes in fully investing herself to the patient's needs by creating long-term relationships that promote a mutual understanding of each patient's values, goals, and aspirations. Together, this enables both Dr. Napolitano and her patients to achieve the ideal life-changing transformations that ensure the best quality of life possible. Well, who would not want to love that arrangement right there? So without any further ado, let me welcome my very special guest tonight, Dr. Angelica Napolitano. Good evening,
Hi,
Angelica.
how
Welcome.
Are you? Thanks for
I'm
having
doing
me.
very well.
You?
How are you? I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
I
Can
appreciate
you hear me
it.
Good?
So, yeah, you're perfect. You're coming in loud and clear. Thank you. So let's talk about, first off, before we get into specifics, what made you decide to get into this career path? What was it about, obviously, the physical therapy and that side of it, and also to sort of marry it with golf? What was sort of the deciding factor?
So there's a lot that kind of goes into my decision for physical therapy as a career in general. I have a 16-year-old brother who has cerebral palsy, and he's a quadriplegic. He's in a wheelchair. And being much older than him, I saw his struggles as a young, infant through, childhood and adolescence. And, I was in PT school way before, he was in his teen years. Really, really spoke to me. Seeing somebody that you love go through that and just how much these physical therapists could help him be functional. And that's the key, is function. And that
right.
hit home for me. I mean, that's my family.
Right.
And then
right.
my brother, my dad, my mother were very into fitness, and we always have been. And I just started at a very young age doing sports, working out, all these things, and I really liked the body and the human anatomy. So it was kind of like a no-brainer. My father's actually a dentist, so I wanted to kind of see if I wanted to go in that path in life, and it just wasn't for me. And so I was like, yeah, it's physical therapy. So that's kind of how it led me to PT in general. And then the golf kind of came about a year, give or take, ago, when I actually graduated 3 years ago. So I'm a relatively new grad. And I started working immediately for a clinic, and became the regional manager after 9 months of 5 different clinics and facilities within the West Palm Beach area. The structure and everything wasn't, the work environment wasn't good for me. I was like, I can't do this. It's unorganized. So I tried to, get it to be a little bit more structured, and it just, upper management wasn't having my back. So I was like, you know what, I'm burning out, and if I don't do something soon, then I'm going to leave the profession altogether. So that's when I took a leap of faith. I started up a side hustle, which is now my practice and my main focus, and I invested in a mentor to help me. His name is Greg Todd. He has been the best business mentor. He's also a physical therapist himself, and he just changed my world. And 2 weeks into starting mentorship with him, I started my practice, and then 6 weeks later, I quit my full-time job and have just been practicing in my own practice. So it's been actually last March was when I went full-time in my practice. So it's been a year. And, he taught me niche down. And I live in Jupiter, Florida. I'm a golfer myself. And I was like, golf. It just made sense. So I really went after it. And my message is very clear. If you go to my website, you go to my social media, I don't talk about, I talk mainly about golf and impairments within the body from golf. And so my message is very clear, and it's worked for me. I really enjoy it. I love my patients. I love being able to make a difference finally, and not having insurance companies control my treatment and control my patient's ability to recover. So that's kind of how that happened.
Well, what's interesting too, and and I think that's a fantastic backstory, and that's why I wanted you to share it a little bit because, obviously you had a personal reason for obviously going in that particular route with your brother and that, and then you obviously being a golfer decided that was an opportunity there as well to sort of marry the two together. And what's interesting, Angelica, about your story, and one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here is, and you know this yourself, being somebody that plays golf, most amateurs out there that play the game as really, because it's not a contact sport, it's not like football or soccer or even basketball where there's a lot of contact, but yet golfers are still prone to injury, whether it be wrist or otherwise. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So let's start off by talking about the importance of injury prevention, what we can do, and obviously more importantly, physical screening, why it's important to get screened.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize when I tell them, my specialty is golf and golf-related injuries and things like that. They're like, you can get hurt from golfing. And I tell them, well, actually, golf is the number one non-contact sport that has the most injury. So that's pretty big right there. I mean, if you look at the golf swing, it is a quick, coming on that downswing burst of energy, right? So your body has to move in a multi-planar fashion. And a quick, powerful, bam. It's the same systems are used as sprinting if you're a sprinter. Same systems. Those short, quick bursts of energy. But you don't have to rotate and all that when you're sprinting. It's just a straight line. You go for it. Golf is very rotational and multidimensional. So you can imagine how it's not a natural pattern of movement. And so you have to train, and you have to train specifically to your sport, or you're going to get hurt eventually. And the repetitive movement and the prolonged stress that the golf swing has on people really, really, really takes a toll after a while. I mean, you see that in professional golfers. You see that in especially amateurs, because amateurs
and you notice something too. And
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, finish your thought. No, go ahead and finish your thought.
So amateurs, they don't really see the value in, I guess, a physical therapy type service because they don't think that they're hurting themselves. They haven't had the injury happen yet. And I tell people, don't wait till it's too late. Get screened, prevent injury, because this sport is not, it doesn't mess around. So go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, you're exactly right. We talked about this a little bit earlier tonight on the Coach's Corner panel. John Decker, I know you know very well, and we'll talk about him and that a little bit later on. But because I know you guys are working on something together, a special project, and we'll let you explain a little bit more detail. He kind of let the bug out of the can, if you will. Cat out of the bag, that's what I was looking for. It's been a bad night, so I got the wrong analogy, but you know what I meant.
Yep.
But I'll let you explain a little bit more. But, a lot of people don't realize, just as you pointed out, that, even though golf is not a contact sport, that really there are a lot of injuries that can happen. And I want you to talk about, because you touched on this a little bit, let's talk about the mobility patterns and the stability patterns now. Just what is being engaged in a golf swing and that could potentially create problems.
Right. So there's a pattern within our body. It's an alternating pattern of stable and mobile segments that you need for the game of golf. A stable joint moves in one plane. So, for example, the knee, it just bends and straightens, right? And then you have your mobile joints that move in all the planes, 3 different planes, okay? So like the ankle and the hip, for example. So the alternating pattern goes, do you want me to go through that, or is that kind of just like
sure,
boring?
No.
So it starts from the bottom.
By all means.
Bottom up. Your foot's got to be stable. Your ankle needs to be mobile. Is mobile. Your pelvis, lumbar spine, SI joint is stable. Your thoracic spine, which is the mid-back in between the shoulder blades, that's got to be mobile, as we know, with the rotation. And then the shoulder blade, scapula, is stable. The actual shoulder joint itself is mobile. The elbow is stable, and the wrist is mobile. So if you don't have mobility and stability adequately within that pattern, you're going to compensate somewhere along the line, and you're going to take it up into a different joint. I mean, you can even do something in the knee that affects the wrist if you don't have that stability there, or that mobility in the ankle, and it could affect the wrist or the elbow. It's just crazy the way the body works, but that transfer of energy, you're going to take it up somewhere along the line, and you're going to do some kind of faulty swing pattern and compensate time and time and time again, because as you know, repetitive practice, that's what you're doing. You know, whether you're on the driving range or you're playing the game, you're playing 18 holes. It's a repetitive thing that you keep doing over and over again. And most likely, whether you're amateur, recreational, or pro, I mean, you're doing this all the time. Obviously, the pros way more, but you know, these people don't realize that they're doing these. Their movement patterns are altered, and that's what really gets them. They don't know that they should go to a PT, or they're stubborn and they're like, I'm fine. And then they just wait for that boom, that back pain that hits them, and they drop to their knees, and they're like, oh my God, now I can't play golf. I can't go to work. I can't sleep.
Right.
Your whole lifestyle is disturbed. But people don't realize that.
We see that.
Yeah, exactly. You see
that
as
an instructor
all the time.
Yeah, as an instructor like John and Pete that was on, you know, we see this all the time. People coming in and you can tell they're kind of favoring, you know, one side or the other because they've got a minor injury, and they don't really want to. You know, they kind of embellish it a little bit, and they don't really get into the details of it, but you know they've hurt themselves or they've done something. So, you know, as an instructor, you have to be mindful of that. Obviously, I'm not a physical therapist, so I don't know, you know, what specifically to tell them other than don't do what you're doing. If you're nursing an injury, go and see somebody that's specialized like yourself. And I want to ask you something too, in lines with what you're talking about, the stability and mobility of patterns of people. Are there things that can alter those patterns? And if so, what are they?
Yes, absolutely. So traumas, whether you've had an accident, prolonged posture, holding a certain posture for a long time over the span of your life or whatever it may be, and then just repetitive injuries, chronic, you know, ankle sprains, chronic strains in your hamstring, things like that, for example. And then your thoughts. We know that golf is very mental, the stress, anxiety, and then what you're putting in your body, what you eat, what you breathe, what you drink, everything you consume, and then the technique, the skills that you've learned over time that you don't know you're moving weird or abnormally, and the muscle patterns. So those are going to alter your pattern. And people go throughout their daily life, you know, day in, day out, doing these things, and they don't have injury yet. They don't have pain yet. Okay, but that's why do you think so many people have to have knee replacements and hip replacements and things like that? Not saying that those can always be prevented, but there are things that could have in their lifetime helped prolong that surgery or helped, you know, certain things. And people just don't realize that. We live in a fast-paced society. Nobody wants to take time out of their day, number one, pay for a service that they don't have pain for. They're like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm just spending money. Money's flying out of my pocket for nothing. Well, it's really not nothing. If you're serious about golf or, you know, you don't want to get injured and you play a lot, you need to think about these things. And I'll tell you, men are very stubborn, but women are smart. They come to me for injury prevention all the time. They're like, I just don't want this to happen to me. I notice that this is happening because we look at ourselves in the mirror and we're like, oh, our shoulders are slouched forward, or I don't look, you know, I see myself in pictures and I'm not standing up straight. Men are just like, whatever, give me another glass of scotch or what, you know, and just ignore it. But these things are going to come into fruition eventually, and they're going to get you. And when they get you, it's going to be worse if you let it go for so long. If you let it chronically happen, it's going to take longer, number one, to recover, and it's going to be more painful when it does happen. So.
Right, and those are definitely words of wisdom, and you're exactly right in your analogy particularly between men and women, and that's probably why women tend to normally live longer than men, because they tend to listen to some good advice from their doctor or what have you, and men just sort of whatever, like you said, and just go for it. Now, how can muscular imbalances? Now, that's an interesting thing. Because these are obviously some points that you sent over to me earlier. Talk about that. How does that affect the game? Is that because of not working out correctly, or is it just favoring? Maybe because I'm left-hand dominant, as an example, or left side dominant. How does muscular imbalances affect our golf game, and also
your swing?
Go ahead.
Yeah, your body, your swing, everything. So a lot of it has to do at address. Okay, that's the first thing we look at when we screen somebody. And there's a thing called lower cross syndrome and upper cross syndrome. Okay, so upper cross syndrome happens in the upper part of your body, right? So there's an imbalance between tight and shortened muscles and weak and inhibited muscles, so muscles that are off. So in the front, as we know, we slouch forward, our head pops out, forward and all that stuff. That's called forward head rounded shoulder posture. We have tightness in our pec muscles, our chest muscles, right? Our upper trap muscles, our lat, all those things. And then we have weakness in the front of our necks. So think of it like this, our core, right? Everyone thinks of just their abdominals as their core. It's actually your glutes as well. But your neck and your head, the front of the neck is the core to your head. Just like your core around your stomach and all that part is like what kind of controls it a lot of times. Same thing in the front of your neck. If we have weakness in the front of the neck, our head's going to pop forward. If we have weakness in our core, our back is going to curve, right? It's going to have that S curve, that hyperextension. So same type of thing. So lower cross syndrome, upper cross syndrome just mimic each other. It's a cross between the front and back of the body. And so this really, really hurts our posture. That's the main thing, is the posture, right? So when you go to set up into your, go to address, if you have that S posture, it's really putting a lot of pressure on your lumbar spine, your lower back, and your hips and your SI joints. And then if you have that C posture, which is at the top, which it looks like a C, coming from the neck into the thoracic spine, you're rounded, kind of like a hunchback. That's that
right.
Upper cross syndrome. So that's really just right there. Right there, you need to stop and say, we need to address this before we go any further. That's a muscular imbalance that you can change. It's not going to happen overnight, and the patient has to be willing and do their exercises and come in and get their work done. But just right there, that can change the whole dynamic of your game. I know that for myself. I'm not a pro by any means, but I was having some shitty setup, and I took lessons. Everybody needs to take lessons, no matter who you are, and that literally changed. That changed my whole game. So it's just those types of muscular imbalances need to be addressed off the bat, or you're just doing no good. You're adding insult to injury if you don't.
Yeah, and we see this obviously as golfers age, as they get into their later years, we start to see that. And obviously there's been a lot of discussion in the media and that over the years about people working at their desk, long hours every day, slumped over a computer screen or, a laptop or what have you, that it tends to create that curvature you talk about, because they're not really engaging, the muscles the way they should be, and they're in that position all the time. And obviously sitting all day long is not good for you either. And I know you said, I know we can't get into it, you said that there's some things that we can do to sort of reverse that a little bit. Obviously aging is going to eventually catch up with all of us, but there are some things that we can do to correct that. And if it's done properly, and I mean, I know this is a big if, because a lot of people don't do things the way they should, but Angelica, if people do things properly on your recommendations, on average, how long can they start to see noticeable changes in some of the things you just talked about?
If they, start out, and I always say frequency in the beginning is key. So meaning like you need to come to me 2-3 times a week initially, and do your exercises at home that I give you. That's about the first 1 to 2 weeks, maybe 3, depending how involved and complex the patient is. If they're doing their things at home and all that, you start to go to 2 a week, 1 a week. You make the patient self-sufficient. And for me, since I'm one-on-one with my patients, it's very quick. The time that you save by going to someone like me who is a cash-based therapist, you start to notice changes in the second week. I mean, even after our sessions, people are like, I call it the heroin effect, because they're so relaxed and they can get and they can move because, you know, I'm working manually, hands-on for most of the time because that's skilled things that the patient can't do at home to themselves. So they can finally move their shoulder blade the right way. They can finally get that rhythm between the shoulder joint and the shoulder blade, the scapula, to move in a fluid pattern that's not altered. And that's very, very important. Everything has to move in conjunction with each other. So once they can do that, once they get that motor control and that postural endurance, and it's not going to happen overnight, but the second, third week, you really start to notice changes. Because I make it individualized to the patient, to their screening results. Okay, I see a little bit of instability in the shoulder blade with this, so I'm going to make this person, you know, do X, Y, and Z. You know, not everybody has the same, you know, issues, obviously, as we know. And that's what makes their swing unique. Not everybody has the same swing, and not everybody moves the same way. So you really have to look into it and know what you're doing and know what to address for that person to get better. And if you can really put all your energy and focus into that for these patients, they will get better. And that's when you start to make a reputation and impact in the community because people start to trust you, and they're like, oh, this girl actually knows what she's talking about. And so that didn't come overnight for me, you know, but it's, you know, people start to see the changes and they're like, they believe, and that's what's really important is to build that trust and show them this is why. Let me film you. Send me your golf swing. This is why. This is why you're doing that. Now here, let's try this. Okay, now do it again. Reassess. And they're always like, wow, how'd you know that? Just for me,
well, and the other
science,
thing too,
common sense,
Yeah, and the other thing too is once they understand, you know, once you've explained to them what they've been doing wrong or why this is happening, what they can do to correct it. This is not something. It's not a quick fix thing where okay, well we're going to just fix it and then that's it for the rest of your life. These are things that they can adapt or adopt, if you will, throughout the remainder of their life, so that to prevent. So it's not just about sort of recovering and adapting in the moment. This is something that they can help them prevent for future issues as well, and giving them these a skill set, if you will, to help overcome some of these challenges is something that they can carry on, you know, for years and years and years, and have a better quality of life. And that's obviously what your long-term objective is. Obviously, you want to help their golf game, but really you want to help them have a better life.
Right.
Much more prolonged, healthy life. Right. Go ahead.
Exactly. It's a lifestyle change when these people come into my clinic and they're talking about, you know, whatever is going on with them. I'm like, listen, you know, John, listen, John Doe, listen, Jane. This isn't going to be an overnight magical, instant gratification type fix. And again, our society likes instant gratification. But this is going to be something, and I set the expectation right away to work on it. We're going to have to communicate. I'm going to be annoying the shit out of you. Sorry for cussing, but I'm going to be annoying you. I'm going to be holding you accountable to making this change, you know, and that change, in a sense, like sometimes that's all the person needs, and then the education is the other half of the battle. Like they want to know what's going on and why in their body, why they're moving that way, and why they got that way. You know, a lot of people will say over and over again, well, how did that happen? And I'm like, look at this picture and look at this picture, before and after. You were living life like this. You were cutting off oxygen because of the way you held your posture. You know, you weren't getting everything that you necessarily could to nourish your body and create this wellness. And then they get it. They're like, I mean, nobody has ever told me because I didn't have the resources or know who to turn to. And they have horror stories of people they went to in the past, other PTs, chiropractors, acupuncturists. This person, couldn't help me, blah, blah, blah. And that's another part of why people don't opt for help, because they have had these issues in the past with other treatment providers that have not done anything for them. So they're like, I'm not going to waste my time and money on that. People out there like myself who know this can change the game literally. You just have to find the right person, and you have to find a person that niches and specializes in what you want. If a runner, I still treat runners, tennis players, and all that as well. But my thing is golf, but I still can make them better. I'm sports, you know what I mean? But it just happens that my niche is golf, and I just know the ins and outs of what needs to be done for the golfer. I might have to research the runner a little bit, and I might say, hey, I'm going to refer you to my friend down the street. She deals with a lot with runners, and I think she'd be better for you. And that's okay, because they're going to appreciate that.
Right.
Than just saying, let's just guess and try to make you better, and then they're spending this money and you suck. So I tell people, look for that person that specializes in your hobby.
Right, and I want to point something out too that I sort of glossed over in the very beginning when I was telling the listeners a little bit about your background, and that is you believe in a much more holistic approach as opposed to what a lot of others did. In other words, you're not relying on a lot of medications and or surgery. Now, obviously, there may be situations that may be extreme that surgery might be required, and obviously you're going to advise them as best you can in that particular case. But one of the problems in today's society, everybody's looking for, well, I'm a little bit sore, can you give me a pill? Or, this is hurting and that, what kind of surgery do I need? And this is sort of the go-to with a lot of industries right now. And the truth of the matter is sometimes just some simple exercise or change in motion can actually offer much better relief than going to some of those other alternatives. And I like that about your practice is because I think there's too much medication and surgery out there right now in a lot of areas, not just in your particular field, but in the medical field in general. And I think that this is what's obviously hurting a lot of people. And that's obviously for another program, another story. But I just wanted to point that out because I think that's very important for the listeners to understand that what you're really saying is that there are things that you can do yourself with my help and guidance that will improve your golf game, but also improve your life in general without having to, get on another medication or go and have another surgery. And again, there might be certain circumstances or isolated conditions that may result in that, but that's not what you're really talking about here. You're trying to offer other solutions and benefits without having to go that route all the time. And I like that about your practice. So let's talk about, since we are talking about golf, let's talk about some of the keys to consistency and accuracy.
Oh, doesn't everybody want to know the key to consistency and accuracy? If I can hit that ball straight on every time, be consistent, not slice, or, and this is not always guaranteed. But it's good kinematic. The Honda Classic was a couple weeks ago, and I didn't promote my business or anything, but I did go into the bear trap. For those of you that don't know what the bear trap is, it's just the hot spot of the Honda Classic, where everyone parties and whatever. So I went in there and I did golf trivia. And I asked, one of the questions was, what do you lead with from the transition during the downswing? Like, what's the first thing you lead with? And that starts the kinematic sequencing on the downswing. And that is the key to consistency and accuracy, is having that sequence perfected and, you just carry it out the right way. So do you know, I'm sure you know what that is.
Yeah, go ahead. Share the consistency.
Okay, so
yeah, go ahead.
So it's you gotta lead with the pelvis on the downswing, then your thorax, your thoracic spine, your arm, and then the club. And then we always know that golf, just like most sports, is the transfer of energy from the ground up, right? And when you're not leading with the pelvis first, or you're kind of out of, that's when our movement starts to get compensated and altered, and things are that transfer of energy is taken up in a negative way, and that affects our entire body, our fascia, our muscles, our bones, our joints, everything like that. Just over time, again, it's a prolonged, repetitive sequence that you do time and time again over the span of your life. And if you're doing it wrong, you're not going to hit that ball straight on, and you're not going to be accurate. You're not going to have consistency and accuracy. So, and that's a very trained thing, because a lot of people, number one, don't know this, and number two, aren't doing it. So that's, again, why we look at your swing. We film it, and we draw weird little lines everywhere and have you do all these weird physical tests, to check why you're not having that consistency and accuracy. And then we make that plan specific to your issue to make sure that we can build that for you and get that downswing transition and that sequence on the right path, the right way to move. Again, the golf swing's not a natural movement, but it's the game. So you got to, if you're serious about it and you don't want to get hurt or you want to prevent further injury, you have to be able to get that sequencing down for that injury prevention and for that consistency and accuracy when striking the ball. Does that make sense?
No, that's perfect sense. And, one thing I just want to add, so the listeners fully understand, some of the things that you've talked about up to this point, whether it be not just injuries, but posture and things like that, can alter or affect the accuracy and consistency of your golf swing. And this is what people don't understand. It's not just, people always think it's, well, I just don't know how to, everybody naturally has an ability to swing a golf club. It's actually a very natural movement. And with a little bit of training and understanding of how it works, anybody can get up and hit a golf ball and hit it quite well. The problem is a lot of times we get in our own way. And again, it's not understanding the proper sequence. And that's why you see sometimes people will kind of rush the club down from the top, and their arms and their hands are coming down real quick and their hips haven't even moved yet. And it's because that sequencing has gotten out of sequence. And sometimes it's just a matter of showing them what the sequence and helping them to understand that. But then there's other cases where it might be their body is physically preventing them from doing that. It could be an old hip injury. It could be, a muscle imbalance, whatever the case may be. And this is why coming to somebody like yourself is critical to get a proper screen so that you can show them some of the things that are going on and help them come up with solutions to overcome and change that, correct?
Correct. It's really a team approach. You got to have the instructor, you got to have the PT, and you got to have the, golf, the fitness professional. When you have that team, and not everybody can afford or has the time to have a team like that around them.
Sure. If
you're training people, if you're helping people, you need to know that is key in creating a good functional swing that is going to not hurt you or, kind of prevent less injury or pain down the line, because I don't know everything that you or, John Decker might know. I don't. I can look at a golf swing and be like, that looks like some weird shit to me. But he's going to take the swing, analyze it differently than I would. I'm analyzing it from a physical standpoint. And a lot of times, most times, it's because there's physically something blocking them, whether it's their nervous system. That's huge. The nervous system, if it doesn't integrate into what you're doing neuromuscularly, that's not a word, but it sounded good, then you're not going to get that motor control and get that pattern down. It's just not going to stick. It's not. So integration of the nervous system, a coach can't do that. They don't know what or why, but I also can't teach you how to swing for the, I'm not a pro. I'm not a teaching professional.
Right.
But I can look at your body, and that's the point of the screen, and go, okay, so you can't do this because of this, this, and this. And John saw this. So we put the two together, and we're like, wow, okay, now this makes sense. But you are, as TPI certified, you are trained to look at the swing and go, okay, and kind of relate it physically and all that stuff to why it's happening. But again, if it was me, in my practice, I always refer to a pro to be like, hey, what do you think of this? Or they come to me, what do you think of this? And you got to put both of your expertise together and come up with why it's happening, because I might not be able to help them. I might be like, hey, he's just doing this weird thing. I don't know why, but it has nothing to do. He did this test and it was fine. So, you know, that's on you. Or like, you know, obviously I wouldn't leave them for dead. I'd be like, you know, this could be something you could brainstorm together, come up with a solution. But most of the time, your brain, it's that mind-body connection. And a lot of times you're being blocked, and you have to break through that. You have to break through to reach your physical goal, because we are blocked by our mind a lot, as you know. And golf is mentally tough. People hold themselves back, not only in their mind, but that affects them physically as well, hugely. That stress and that first tee jitters or whatever you were saying earlier affects them, and they'll think too much, and they can't have that, you know, pre-swing, you know, thing that they do, routine. If it takes too long, like John was saying, you're already in your head. You're done. Yeah. And I think that probably happened to all of us. So, So just working, I mean, even a mental coach, getting that person in there and helping, you need it all.
Well, and Angelica, the other thing, too, that I think, you know, we talked about earlier on the panel discussion tonight, you know, about going out and spending all this money on a fancy driver that's, you know, going to cost $300-400, that's, you know, hopefully going to get them a little further down the fairway. And the truth of the matter is, I mean, I've been around the golf business, you know, John and Pete that was on earlier, you know, for a good number of years. And I know that that's just not true. Obviously at the professional level, and people that are very proficient in the golf swing, they can take that new modern technology and get the most out of it. But for most of our high handicap amateurs out there, for them to spend that $300-400 on a new, you know, this fancy driver that's guaranteeing them an extra 20 or 30 yards, I would much rather them spend that money on some good quality golf lessons. But I would also think, and I want to ask you this question here, especially for new golfers getting in, this is a good opportunity for golfers that have never stepped on the first tee or stepped on the practice tee, if you will, to go and have a screen done by somebody, a professional like yourself, to find out if there are going to be any issues, physical issues that need to be addressed before they actually even start beginning their lessons with somebody like John or myself or somebody else out in the profession. Because if they're dealing with old injuries, or if they're dealing with muscle inadequacies or imbalances, if you will, right from the get-go, then they're not going to be able to transition that golf swing properly. So the earlier that we can address some of these issues, the better their experience is going to be, because there's no point in them going to the lesson tee and taking, you know, half a dozen lessons from their local professional if there's physical issues that are hampering their ability to execute the golf swing correctly. So I would much rather see that. And I think, would you agree that would probably be a smart idea for them to go and have and look at some of those issues and address issues if they need be before they actually go out and really get into the golf game?
Yeah, early intervention is key. Obviously, to really, number one, prevent you from having this weird movement pattern during your swing that you learned over time for so long that you can't change now. Or it's very hard to change. Once you have a swing pattern down, you know how hard that is to change.
Sure.
I've had patients that are, you know, some on some tours, not, you know, the pro, not the PGA tour, but, you know, like some Symetra and all that, and they're trying to relearn a different swing pattern, and it is just difficult. Your body, again, that's nervous system. Your body is trained over and over and over again to do this one pattern, and you're trying to retrain, re-educate your muscles to do a certain thing, to hold it, to have the strength, the power, the consistency, all of that. Again, you're literally starting from scratch. So early intervention, yes, is key. The problem is people, that's the ideal world. That I would love for that to happen for all golfers, for everybody. But the thing is, they don't do that because they either don't know or they just don't care, and they're just going to go into it and do what they want to do, or take the lessons from the pro at their local, you know, clubhouse or whatever, and just that person also might not know that what they're doing is physically a challenge because of an old injury or because of an imbalance. They're trained to see things, but some are better than others, as we know, and And some won't refer out. They'll just okay, let's try it this way. Well, why can't you do this? And that's really when they need to go, I can't fix this. Who can? And all of these pros need to be trained to refer out. And same with me and PTs. Refer to your, local coaches in the area to help these people with their swing, to help these people not hurt themselves. Because once you do, you can't, like I said, you're out of work. You can't golf. You can't do the things you love. And then what happens? Now we're getting mental and we're going to get depressed. We're going to, maybe we're going to resort to that painkiller because we just want to go to sleep, or that muscle relaxer, and then we get addicted, and it just is a downward spiral in a lot of people, if you will, because that's just the way the world works. We're so easily have access to these drugs, and we so easily just ignore things that are a clear indicator of, hey, this isn't right. My back has a sharp pain when I do the swing over and over again, and it's been getting worse, but I'm going to ignore that. And when I tell somebody, they just are like, well, let's try a different way. You have to look at those things and go, that's not right. And then, like I said, in an ideal world, the person that's just going to start out golfing comes to, get a physical screen. That'd be amazing. But that doesn't happen. That rarely happens. And where it needs to start is childhood, because that's the serious golfers.
Right.
That's when they start. So they need to really have people that are well-trained, that can identify these things, that work as a team to help these children grow into good golfers if they're really serious about taking on that career path or getting into college with a scholarship or whatever it may be. Even if they just love the sport and want to golf, recreationally for their lives, you have to start it then. And that's, I think there's a lot of junior, golf professionals and medical professionals, but it really needs to be, that needs to be key in a golfer's training and in a golfer's life, starting it in childhood, starting it from the very beginning. Because how often do people, I do have patients that pick up a club when they're in their 50s and they're like, hey, I'm retired and rich and now I want to golf. Okay, well, they don't know that they should be. They don't know that they should be screened. So it's hard. It's just spread that awareness.
Right.
I'm just telling you like it is. We know that's the truth, right? Not always, but they don't know that there's resources out there, and they're going to get hurt. So but like I said, that's not a realistic.
Yeah. Well, here's something too, and this is something we've talked about on my program in the past, and certainly we'll bring it up again. But I look at an opportunity in our industry, and I'm talking about the golf industry, to really, and I know there are a lot of pros that partner with professionals like yourself that take advantage of that, for their collegiate players and tour players that they work with. But for the everyday average recreational golfer out there really isn't that sort of partnership. And again, it can be very, very inexpensive. I mean, I think people, when they hear, trainers or physical therapists and things like that, they think, well, I don't need that. I'm not really an overly athletic person, or I'm not playing competitively. I just want to go out and have fun. But I think as teaching professionals, I think this is something that we have to start adding to our vocabulary when we're working with students and encouraging them. And I think it's good for a lot of local professionals like myself and others to reach out to individuals like yourself within our communities and say, look, I've got this, great teaching profession. You've got a physical therapy profession here. There may be some opportunities that we can work together with one another and sort of, cross-pollinate, if you will, in professions. And I think that over time, you'll start to see a change where people will say, and again, that doesn't mean that, you're going to have an entourage. Every amateur is going to have an entourage of people around them. But I think that if they get educated right from the get-go, even when they get in their 50s, if they want to take golf, a lot of women are getting into golf now. Women executives are getting into golf. And, they may need to have that screening done or other things done in order to help them adapt their golf swing to fit their game just right. But they don't have that information. available. So this is something that I think the teaching professionals can initiate that conversation and then bring in to carry it on, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the basis for TPI, and it should be the basis for all clubs and all people. You know, if someone's coming in to get a lesson from you, you should right then and there be willing to refer out if need be. And a lot of people see it as a threat because they say, oh, they're going to take my client. No. Number one, we don't do the same thing. I can't tell them and educate them on the same things that you could and vice versa. So that's not taking the client. That's looking out for their best interest, and trust me, they're going to respect and trust you and appreciate what you've done for them by doing that. I'm not going to tell someone and lie to somebody if they ask me a question and I don't know it, or if there's something wrong and I don't know it, but I'm just guessing. I'm not going to do that to somebody because, number one, I don't want to hurt anybody, and I want what's best for my clients and patients. And I know that is to refer out when I don't know the answer. And that is the problem, is the threat of the money and the financial situation of them being taken from you. It happens with fitness, instruction, medical.
Yep.
And that's not how we should be viewing it, because it's very negative, and that's only hurting our patients and our reputation, essentially. So yeah.
Right. No,
but
I
I don't
agree
know how
wholeheartedly.
realistic it is to get
so let's
everybody
talk.
on
We
the
got
same
a
page. If
little.
I could, I would. But
well, everything starts, with sort of planting that seed, and then it's a matter of it growing and growing and growing, and hopefully we can start doing that. So tell me about, John sort of let the cat out of the bag, as I said, about a podcast that you guys are going to start doing. I think he mentioned hopefully beginning in April. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so John and I are going to be releasing a podcast this spring, and he's obviously a coach and instructor, and I'm a physical therapist, so we have the medical and the instruction side of things. We can tie in fitness together, but having a fitness, we might just spotlight fitness professionals on it or whatever, but it's going to be called the Swing Doctors Golf Fitness and Performance Podcast. So yeah, so it'll be coming out this spring. April is target month. We're both very busy within our professions, so we're working on that now, but we'll have a definite date soon. And that's just going to be us just talking about, golf fitness and performance, and having guests on, and, just spotlighting different people in the profession. Because, again, awareness, we're creating awareness, and that's what's important, to really have people educated and know their resources and know what's going on with their sport and their hobby, and how to really create an overall wellness and holistic approach and view to their game. And that's really what we are trying to do, that holistic approach, that wellness approach through our podcast. So it'll be coming soon, and it's going to be exciting. It's going to be awesome. I love John. He's great. I found him on social media, actually, and I saw his videos from golfswing.com. He's a great instructor. And I reached out to him, and I said, hey, I love your videos, and just, introduced myself that way. And then we, started talking online. We got on a couple phone calls here and there, texting, just throwing out ideas to each other, or, hey, this is going on. What do you think of this? Blah, blah, blah. And got each other kind of excited, And then the PGA show came to Orlando in January, and I live in Jupiter, but I was actually on my way back from St. Augustine at that time, which was perfect. So I stopped in Orlando and met up with John at a golf course out there, and he gave me a lesson, and we had lunch and all this stuff. He signed his book for me, so I have a copy of his book. And we just were we knew that we were friends and had a cool relationship, and then that just kind of confirmed it when we met. And he's a great guy, and I'm really excited to start this venture with him and just see what comes of it, because I think we can really make this something good for our audience.
Well, and And I agree wholeheartedly. You know, I've had John on the show the last several years, both as a guest, but also on the Coach's Corner panel. And he definitely brings some great ideas for the instruction side of things. And obviously you have a lot of great ideas and a lot of passion on the physical side and the wellness side as well. So I can definitely see it being a very successful venture for the two of you. And I look forward to hearing when it comes available. So please, both either you and John or together, you can let me know when it's launched, and I'll be more than happy to plug it on my show. You know, when it's getting ready to launch, to let the listeners know to tune into that podcast as well. So, Angelica, I've enjoyed having you on tonight. I appreciate your insight from a different perspective into the game, and hopefully people get a little bit better understanding. So now that they've got a little bit of taste of what you do and the importance of the role you play in helping golfers play their best out there, what's the best way for them to reach out to you, whether it be through social media or whatever? Where can they go if they want to connect with you and maybe get some more information from you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Instagram. My social media handle is at Optimal PT and Wellness. So you can find me there. I'm on Facebook, same social media handle. My business page is Optimal PT and Wellness. And then I have an actual Facebook group that is awesome. If anyone listening wants to join it, please do so. I would love to have you in there engaging, asking questions, just how you can better yourself in the game and your wellness, all related to golf. It's called the Golf Doc Pain Elimination and Injury Prevention Support Group. So if you want to join that, please feel free. I would love, like I said, to have you in there. And then my name is Angelica Napolitano, so just look me up on Facebook too in that way, and you can find me there. But, yeah, message me anytime. You can find me on YouTube as well at Optimal Physical Therapy and Wellness. But, yeah, message me. I get right back to you. And, again, my website, optimalptandwellness.com, you can find all my contact info on there as well, and some cool videos and just little blurbs about me and things like that. So, and my blogs. I have a lot of good blog posts there. So that's how you can find me.
Yeah, there's one thing about social media, and I am also obviously on social media, a lot of different platforms as well. It's a great way to communicate and get a message out there. Well, Angelica, I look forward again to having, hearing more about your podcast and that. I look forward to listening to it as it comes due. So please, by all means, reach out to me, and I'll give the same message to John as well to let me know when it is officially going to be launched, when you have your first episode, and I'll be more than happy to plug it through all of my social media networks as well, just to give it that little bit extra boost. So, but I appreciate you coming on tonight and spending some time with me here on Golf Talk Live. It's been a very interesting discussion. I've enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll be able to take away a few things as I start to age in that category as well. I just celebrated a birthday about a week ago, so age is creeping up on me, and thank you. And so I have to be mindful of my physical being, if you will, if I want to continue to be able to do what I do. But thank you for coming on and sharing, and I hope you'll come back and join me again sometime.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed myself, and have a good night and happy belated birthday.
All right, you too. Thank you very much, Angelica.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, that was my very special guest, Dr. Angelica Napolitano, a.k.a. the Golf Doc. You can find her at Optimal Physical Therapy and Wellness in Jupiter, Florida is where she hails from, but you can find her all over social media, as she said, so you can just check out some of those avenues there and learn a little bit more about what it is that she does. It's definitely a very integral part of becoming a better golfer. It's not just about how well you swing the club, but how you swing the club is really what it's all about. So some great information there. And again, I want to thank all of the listeners for faithfully tuning in. And I particularly want to thank John Decker and Pete Buchanan for joining me earlier this evening on the Coach's Corner panel. On that note, I will see all of you, or you all hear me next Tuesday on the Women of Golf show, my other broadcast on Tuesday mornings with my good friend LPGA professional Cindy Miller, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern here on the blogtalkradio.com network. That'll be the next show. And then, of course, next Thursday I'll be right back here on my own for another great Coach's Corner panel, followed by another insightful interview. So thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live, and I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to this evening's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. Remember to tune in each week at blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live. If you can't join us live, check out the on-demand section for previously aired broadcasts, or listen on any of the following social media platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, TalkStream Live, and of course Spotify. To get updates on future shows and upcoming guests, be sure to visit the show's Facebook page, Golf Talk Live blog. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. Remember to join me live each week for another great broadcast of Golf Talk Live. See you next time. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.